Living a Healthy Lifestyle Show with your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie Kay.
Hey everybody, welcome to Living a Healthy Lifestyle Show with your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie Kay. Happy Monday, everybody. I have Jeanne Roberson on, and I'm going to have her tell us a little bit about herself. Welcome to the show.
It's Living a Healthy Lifestyle Show with your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie Kay.
Being here, and I'm excited to be able to share my testimony with you and some of my knowledge about human trafficking and how maybe we can help jump on board with keeping our kids protected. I mean, this is a very hot topic in our industry right now, and it's something that I think parents really need to learn. I think people in general need to learn a little bit more about. I know when people hear human trafficking, a lot of times the first thing they think of is sex trafficking of children who are in bondage, which in all honesty, that's only a small percentage of how children are trafficked, and adults too. I mean, I used to say to my daughters a long time ago, don't park next to a van that has a sliding door. Always make sure that you park somewhere else. But then I realized, after I came to understand how I was trafficked, that that's not how it always happens. So to give you a little bit of background about myself, I came from a very dysfunctional home. I ran away at 14. I got married at 15. I got pregnant at 16. I had the baby at 16. I got pregnant at 15, had the baby at 16. And a month after I turned 17 years old, I met my trafficker. And my trafficker was a woman. And she had actually met me, and I was introduced to her through a waitress at a restaurant that I used to go to when I was pregnant for my son. So once the baby was born, I brought him into the restaurant, and this waitress who I had become kind of friendly with encouraged me to go to this place. It was a dinner supper club, a dinner supper club. And it told me to ask for this woman. And once I did, I thought I was going to see a show, which there was a lovely show. It was nothing sexual about the show, but the woman talked to me. And now, mind you, I was a month after I turned 17, and convinced me to come to my house, move my furniture. She brought costumes, beautiful gowns that zip up the side, wigs. She taught me how to do my makeup. She brought boas and fans and said, you are beautiful. I'm going to make a star out of you. You're going to make a lot of money. She presented herself as an agent, and I'm going to be your agent, and I'm going to send you to clubs all over New England. And being from the dysfunctional home that I was, when I told my mother about it, my mother thought it was the best thing that had ever happened. My mother thought that was it. Her daughter was going to become a celebrity. She brought her boyfriend and all his friends to come and watch me dance, convinced me that, yes, this is a great thing. You're going to make a lot of money, and you're going to move out of the projects. Your son's going to have a backyard to play in. And of course, the woman actually received a portion of my income from every night that I worked, and the club paid her additionally on top of what she took from me, and all the costumes that I needed to perform had to be purchased from her. So she had her own little recruiting going on, and she had other girls that were the same age as me, 16, 17 years old. I think maybe 18 was the oldest of any of the girls. And one of the things I want to make a point on, having said this, is that by law, even if a child at the age under 18, if a child under the 18 gives you permission to exploit them, and what happened to me was exploiting me for sexual, and strippers and exotic dancers and telephone solicitors, these are all considered sex workers. And at the age under 18, it is illegal to be able to exploit a minor because you're considered a minor. Whether they give you permission or not, you are still considered a trafficker. Now, that's a piece of information a lot of people don't realize. This is called grooming, what she did with me. And grooming is how most traffickers get their victims today. They still use this method. And the thing that really gets me is so many people think that, it involves the kidnapping of kids, and it doesn't. Traffickers look for kids that are isolated, come from poor neighborhoods, the projects. They look for kids who are runaways and have come out of the foster system, because those are the kids that are used to being abused. They're used to being manipulated. They've been programmed that this is what life is about. So now a trafficker targets this victim, and then the next thing that they do in the grooming process is that they start to look for the need. Like, a lot of kids are very vulnerable. They're vulnerable. They've been, like I said, they've been abused. They've been poor. Some of them are drug addicts. So they'll come in on the sly. They'll come in like, I'm going to be your friend. I'm going to love you. I'm going to be like a mother to you. My trafficker was like a mother to me. She kind of took the place of nurturing me and being my friend. And it was like playing dress up when she was at my house, putting me in high heels that I could barely walk in, and all these kind of things that happened to me. It was all part of her grooming process to convince me to do what she wanted me to do. She didn't have to force me. And in the society that we're dealing with today, a lot of the traffickers use that same method. It's a lot easier to convince someone to do what you want them to do, helping them to think that this is their own idea. You're not forcing them. You're making them think that this is their own idea. It's all part of the manipulation that they use to convince their victims to go along with what they want them to do. And in a lot of cases, what happens is it's not so much coercion and force, because if a trafficker has presented themselves as a love interest, and he starts out feeding you all the things you want, gifts, expensive pocketbooks, things that you've never had, taking you out to dinner in fancy places, buying you nice clothes. This is all part of the grooming process. Once he's got you believing that you are sufficing, he's feeding your needs. He's sufficing all those desires that you've had that no one else has been able to fill. He's got you. You're willing to do just about anything for him because you're not going to want that to stop. It's like, and these are what traffickers do. They fill that need. And then they go to the next step, which is now they're going to introduce behaviors that you wouldn't normally do. But you care enough and you've got this sense of loyalty with this person. They maybe gave you a place to live. You don't want to lose that. Maybe you are addicted to drugs and they're going to give you drugs, but however it's presented. So now they're going to introduce the next step, which is these behaviors that you wouldn't normally go along with, and you're willing to do because you're loyal to them. And it's introduced in such a way that you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. And this is how a lot of traffickers work. So and there's two forms of grooming. There's that form of grooming, which was how I was groomed, to believe that what I was doing was my own idea. I agreed to it. I didn't recognize it as being manipulated, and I didn't recognize it as being groomed and trafficked. She couldn't have made the money that she made without a stable of girls, which is what she had. She went out and recruited all these young girls like myself. And there was a lot of money made off of those girls by the clubs, by her, the drivers. I wasn't even old enough to drive. So the drivers made money because everybody got a little piece of the action, but
Wow.
I was the pawn. And that's
So,
how this is done.
so how did you get to the point where you saw all this? Like God's been such a huge thing in your life, and He showed you how to get through all this and then to be able to help others. So when was it that you had found out, oh my goodness, I'm being manipulated. This is actually trafficking.
Well, to be honest with you, I was in my 60s when I realized it was trafficking.
Oh wow.
I was in my 60s because I never realized it as trafficking. And I stayed dancing. I stayed in that business off and on until I was 38 years old.
Mm.
I mean, God preserved me. I don't know how else to say it, except that I was still in physical shape that at 38 years old, I could dance. And what happened there is I met my husband. You become conditioned, Carrie. You become mentally conditioned that this is just a way of life. This is all you've known. You're not educated. You can't quit and just go get another job. The average person doesn't see a need to go back to school. Why? I'm making all this money. I'm getting all this attention. You become addicted to alcohol. So, in all the early years, or even say halfway through, this was my life. And I mean, a lot of this I have written in my memoir, which I highly recommend readers purchasing. It'll be out in January. But I mean, you get conditioned, alcohol drinking every day becomes part of your life. And I met my husband in the club, and it took me to have to finally hit bottom to where I was able to go to a 12-step program. Once I went to a 12-step program, I brought God into my life, and that's when I started clearing up. I started clearing up enough to the point where I could look at what was going on and I could say, I just don't want to do this anymore. I mean, by that point, the business was changing. It went from just being a stage dancer to they started adding poles in the middle of the stage. They started bringing in table dancing and lap dancing. And I mean, these were things that were never part of the job. And I mean, I had to actually kind of moralistically take a step down from where I had always said I would never do these sort of things. I found myself doing them
Mm.
because if I wanted to stay working, you had to move with the movement, and the movement
Compromise.
started
Yeah.
changing. Um, and where that business is today is very sad. I mean, and there are a lot of women that are in that business that have been groomed and don't even realize that they've been groomed. In my case, I married my husband. When I started feeling like I wanted to stop dancing, he didn't want me to. I mean, we were living a great lifestyle. We drove nice cars. We lived in a resort community. We had two daughters. And even though I didn't want to dance, I was kind of like recycled by the club that I worked because now I had my daughter. I didn't want to dance, but they were going to give me a job as a waitress. So I started waitressing in the club. And then I started teaching new girls who were coming into the business that really didn't know how to perform in a professional way. There just weren't many left in the business because a lot of them had gotten married, they left, some of them died, they went off in their own direction. So they recruited myself and a couple other girls to actually stay in the club, not as dancers, but to teach the girls how to dress, how to look presentable on stage, and act kind of professional with the customers. Um, as as all this was happening, I noticed that um, one night I was on stage. Let me just explain it this way, because I did go through some spiritual changes after getting sober. And one night I was on stage, and all of a sudden I felt this cold wind go through me. And as the cold wind went through me, I started to go closer to the customers to pick up tips. And it looked as though their faces were gray, like dead gray. and their eyes were lifeless. There was no life behind their eyes. And even the expressions on their face, I'd never seen anything like it. And I was terrified by what I looked at. I backed away from the customers. I wouldn't take a tip from them. I walked off stage. I went into the dressing room. I just huddled in a chair, holding my knees to my chest, and I couldn't speak. They ended up calling an ambulance to bring me to the hospital, and I was diagnosed as having had a psychotic event. But this was a week before my 1 year anniversary of being sober. And I knew somehow that this was God showing me the evil in the hearts of those men. I just knew that that's what it was. And I knew that it was at that point that God was going to start moving me towards leaving that industry. And I didn't know how God was going to use me then as he has today. But I just knew that I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. And I danced for a couple years longer, and I ended up going to a club in Connecticut. And towards the end of my dancing career, I I just started feeling the evil everywhere I went. Every time I walked in a club, I could feel the darkness. I watched the girls doing things that they just never did before. And all I could think to myself was, I just can't do this. This isn't who I am. This isn't who I want to be. And I mean, I literally felt like I was in a battle for my soul between good and evil. Because once I did stop, a lot of things happened. I left my husband. He remarried another woman with the same name as me, with 3 kids, 3 daughters, moved her into the same house that we lived in. She was 18 years younger than me. Our credit reports got merged. I mean, that was such a slap in the face. And when I left him, 3 weeks after I left him, I moved to the Florida Keys. A hurricane hit and destroyed every single thing we owned. 3 weeks after moving there, I was in the process of opening a store called Inspiring Souls. I decided I was going to go into the soul business. So, um, as this, I just felt like I was constantly under attack. I stood in the midst of the rubble with, our clothes, colored clothes all around us. We were oceanfront with a double wide canal in the back. And I just remember completely surrendering to God, which I felt like I had already done anyway. I wasn't drinking. I quit dancing. It was like, Lord, what is it you need me to do? What else do I need to do? But as the weeks went on, I found myself helping people to find housing. My store didn't have merchandise yet, so I used my store. I had a housing board made, like one of those indelible ink you could write on it and erase. Well, if somebody had a house that was repaired, they could come into my store and write their information on the board. And if somebody needed a house, they could come in and look at the board and see what was available. So the interesting thing is it created an in and out every day at my store. Even though I didn't have merchandise and I wasn't able to sell anything, I was helping people find housing. And I found a purpose in myself that I never knew I had. God was allowing me now to see that the material things weren't important. The Gucci bag, the Fendi pocket, this and that, none of that mattered. When you lose everything in a catastrophic event like that, and you're left with nothing but yourself, you start to look around at your neighbors. How can I help? And that's what happened to me. And I developed a compassion and empathy. And God started using me. I became a Red Cross volunteer. And a number of things happened with all the losses that I had when it finally came time for me to leave the Keys, because I mean, I had wanted to leave for a long time. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I remember driving over the bridges one day, coming back from Miami. I'd gone to Miami on a shopping trip, and I was on my way back home to Marathon. And I just remember feeling so sad in my car. I mean, I just felt sad. I didn't want to live in the Keys. I was single. I was a single mom, raising my 2 daughters by myself. I really didn't have any family living there. and I was just like existing, going to my store every day. I made friends. I mean, I had friends. I had great customers. Um, but I just was so unhappy. And I remember hearing the Holy Spirit say to me, don't fret, child, because the Lord has great things in store for you, things that you could never even imagine. And now, learning to listen to the Holy Spirit is a whole nother show, but the Spirit does speak to us. And when we're open to it, when we're open to hearing the Spirit, now that's a word that was given to me years and years ago. And for the longest time, I thought to myself, maybe I just thought it. I can't imagine nothing like that is really going to happen. I don't even know what was meant by it. And then I had been diagnosed with cancer. I went to have my eyelids done, and the doctor was going to reduce my lids on the top, and I had to have some blood work done in order to have the surgery, which is a normal routine thing. But when the blood work came back, it showed my white blood cells elevated, which was the indication something was wrong. Well, my doctor had remembered that I had had a urinary tract infection early in the year. It was taken care of. The symptoms were gone. Never thought a second time about it. But he remembered, and he sent me to a urologist, and they discovered a golf ball sized cancerous cyst on my right kidney, and I had to have it removed. Now, that was not something I expected to ever happen. Had I not gone to the doctor to do the lids, we may not have ever known, and I could have died. Again, God works in our lives in ways sometimes that we don't even realize. One thing can lead to another, can lead to another. Well, the lids led to my cancer being discovered. The recovery time that I spent, a friend of mine called me and asked me if I wanted to go to a writer's conference. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to go. I mean, I can't do anything else. Just had a kidney out. I'm in recovery. So I went to the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is a place I'd never been. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I mean, the scenery there is so spiritual. And while I was there, I met publishers, I met agents, I went to classes, and I'd always wanted to write a book anyway. It just had always been on my heart. And during that conference, I left convinced that I was supposed to write a book, not realizing that I was going to probably write many books. And God was going to, at that moment, start bringing me to that level that he promised all those years ago when I was driving over the Keys. So I started writing short stories for like Guidepost and a series of books called Short and Sweet. And I started writing these short stories, and they started getting published, and I started earning little bits of amount of money for these published stories. And before I knew it, I went to a conference, because you learn a lot at these conferences, I have to say. And I went to one conference, and you talk about God filling the desires of your heart. Well, I had had the opportunity they had what was called Creative Nights. It was the Well Conference. And at Creative Night, you got to express a talent, whether you could sing, play an instrument. Well, my talent was to dance. And I had purchased a beautiful cape, a vintage cape online, and I danced for the Lord to a Christian song. So here I was on this beautiful stage with professional lighting, I forget who it was I was even dancing to, but it was a Christian song that I absolutely loved. And it was as though no one was in the audience. It was between me and God. I was just performing for the Lord, and talk about come full circle. That's totally coming full circle. So God gave me that desire of my heart, and I started recognizing other desires of my heart that he gave me. So acting was something that, I mean, I expected to have become this celebrity. This is what was promised to me. And instead of being a celebrity, once I realized what I was doing and what that life was really about, it was so degrading. It wasn't anything what I had imagined. But God gave me back those dreams. At that same conference, another year, there was a movie producer there. And the movie producer and I had a conversation, and I ended up working on a film with him. And then I ended up working on another film with him. I acted and I worked behind the scenes, doing script supervising, makeup artist, a number of assistant, just running around doing odd things. So now I found another desire of my heart filled. God was allowing me to work in the film industry. While I was working on a film, I met a woman. I was in Palm Beach, and I met a woman who I shared my trafficking story with. And she told me about this organization called Place of Hope, who actually helped foster children who were aged out, trafficking victims. They help educate so that, children can learn and have their faith-based, have a good chance at a better life. And they have their own foster parents that are faith-based people, and they do so much for these kids. And I was so impressed that I went with them and I said, I would like to become a volunteer. Well, the first place that they brought me was to Mar-a-Lago, what they call their signature events. And I mean, I could have been volunteering with the kids. I could have been doing lots of different things, but God made sure that he brought me to a place. How high can you get than the ballrooms of Mar-a-Lago or some of the most famous country clubs? And looking back, I remember God saying that he was going to bring me to places I couldn't imagine. And all of a sudden, over the last, I'll say 5 years, God's been doing that.
Wow.
He's been
That's
doing that.
awesome.
And I just did my third Light in the Shadows with Place of Hope at Mar-a-Lago a couple weeks ago. And I'm so honored to be with those kind of people that are, working to better lives. I mean, they have single moms like me. And I went to a ribbon cutting at one of the houses they had did. And honestly, Carrie, I just broke down into tears. Just the thought of these people that they do the fundraisers with are so giving of their money, of their time, of to be able to build houses to better lives. I wish something like that had been around when I was a kid and I really needed the help. I had no guidance, and these kids have a chance. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine God putting me in a better place than something like this, to be able to just give back. And my book will be out in January.
I'm
And
so excited for you.
yes,
So why
I
don't
am.
you send out your information before we end the show on how they can get your book?
Well, eventually there will be a QR code
Okay.
that you'll be able to go to. But right now, what I suggest is that if you can post an email, Jeanne, Jeanne, no I in my name, Jeanne at Shattered for Glory. .com. Jeanne at shatteredforglory.com. If they send an email there, they're automatically going to be put in a drawing. And once the book is available on Amazon, they will be able to be notified. I'll notify everyone. And I'm going to do a drawing, and several people will be receiving a free copy.
Oh, well, I would be honored to receive a copy, Jeannie. I've enjoyed your story today, and how inspiring everything is, and how you have really opened up the eyes of people to see that they are being manipulated in these sex trafficking thing, and it's not the way that people would normally look at it as.
Yeah.
So thank you for opening our eyes to that. And we appreciate you being on Living a Healthy Lifestyle Show today with your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie Kay. And we're going to have a copy of this, and it's going to be on a whole bunch of different other platforms. So we will look forward to hearing your story. out there, and we will send it to you when it's all done. And thank you so much for being on them today.
My
God bless.
pleasure to be with you. My pleasure. And there's a lot of information in my book to help parents understand how they can maybe prevent their kids from being trafficked. There's so many resources out there. Um, and a lot of them I've put in my book. So
Okay,
hopefully will
great.
help people to get a better understanding.
All right. Well, thank you so much, hon, and have a beautiful, beautiful day and a Merry Christmas.
You too. Thank you, Carrie.